Hello, everybody, and welcome to our latest transition webinar designed to help secure a sustainable future for your farm business. I'm your host, Johan Tasker, and as always, when we talk about a sustainable future here at Farmers Weekly, we do mean a future that is sustainable financially, not just environmentally. And that means profitable farming. Not an easy thing to achieve in the current economic climate, but we are going to try and look at just one aspect of how we can achieve that. In this webinar, we're examining how to recruit and retain the best farm staff. We're going to explore various things: identifying the ideal farm worker for your business, tips for widening the appeal of your workplace and business, how to search resources using things like social media, and the benefits, challenges, and potential pitfalls of everything when it comes to recruitment and retention. And to help us do just that, I'm going to introduce our panel of experts. Stephen Jacob is Chief Executive of the Institute for Agriculture and Horticulture, or TIA, where Stephen is responsible for building capacity and capability across the farming sector. Paul Harris is Managing Director and founder of Real Success, a recruitment and people development consultancy based in the West Midlands. Hugh Pocock is Founding Director and Chief Executive of Cultura Connect, a global agribusiness recruitment firm specialising in agriculture, food and forestry. Harry Henderson is Head of Education and Partnerships at Basis, overseeing exams and training, syllabus development, and indeed the delivery of new training and certification. So good evening to everybody. We've got quite a lot to get through. We have some questions already pre-submitted this evening, and if anybody would like to submit a question, you can do so using the chat facility or the submission facility while you are watching the webinar. So if there's anything that you would like to ask our panel, please do fire away. I think, though, what I'm going to start with is when it comes to recruitment or indeed retention, what do we mean when we say recruiting the best person or the right person for the business? And I'm going to ask everybody this question in turn, so I apologize for whoever's going to be last in answering this, because somebody else might have already said what you're going to say. It's not an easy place to be. But Paul, I am going to start with you. Paul Harris from Real Success. What do we mean when we say the best person or the right person?
It is a great question, and thank you for asking me back onto the webinar, Johan. Great to be back here again. The best fit for a team, it's a great question. The answer to that is it depends on your team. So the best fit for one farm doesn't necessarily mean, in our experience anyway, the best fit for another farm. And I think, I won't hog the scene here. I think everybody can contribute to this, and I'm sure Hugh from a recruitment perspective can add something. But in my view, it's more about the best fit for your team. And sometimes we think it's about recruiting technical skills. Yes, we need those, but often we'll find that a recruitment goes wrong when someone doesn't actually fit into the team. So we use personality profiling to try and make sure that someone's going to fit into a team. But so I would say it's about the person and their character as much as it is their technical skills. And I can expand on that shortly, but I'll give others, as I'm speaking first, the chance to add to that. So for me, it's the right fit rather than necessarily their technical skills.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. I'm going to go to Stephen, and then I'm going to go to Hugh, which means, Harry, you're going to be the last. But let's we will mix it up a bit later on. So other people get to go first and last. But Stephen, the best person, the right person to recruit.
Fantastic. Thank you, Johan. Good evening, everybody. I think it's a really good question, and quite rightly, we do quite often focus on sort of skills assessment and ensuring that we've got the right skills and capabilities within the individual to join our team or to enjoy our company. But I think there's a few other things that we've really got to consider and really think about. Reliability and consistency is something which is crucially important in both ag and hort. We work in quite fast-moving environments, and to ensure that people are going to turn up is really key to us. And that goes into the right mindset as well. And that's not age related. It's having that right sort of proactive mindset, someone that's going to sort of grow and work with you as your team progresses. So adaptability and growth. And communication, I think that's something else, which is quite often overlooked, but a good communicator. And that's both ways, of course. You've got to be able to communicate with your team and your team members, but you want someone who's going to communicate and talk to you and be really quite open and transparent about what they're doing. So I won't go into too much more, but that cultural alignment is important as well as that skills and skills assessment. And I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about skills as we go on.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephen. Hugh, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, good evening, and thank you, Johan. And a very similar viewpoint, really, to Stephen and Paul. But I think one of the reasons we're on this call tonight is the fact the industry is struggling to find people. And I think if you're actually trying to find the right person, and you looked at all the things that's been asked in this question about, is it about skills, attitude, experience, and mindset? Yes, it is all of those things. But I think first and foremost, you've got to think about what is the job you're trying to fill. And how can I fill that if the available talent is not there? Because we could be looking for experience, which a lot of people, and skills that a lot of people are looking for. But if it's not available, then you really then got to start to think about attitude and culture and communication, as Stephen mentioned before. So great question, but I think it's very much dependent on the role itself and the availability of talent in your area.
Thank you. Thanks, Hugh. And Harry, how about you?
I can only echo what everyone else has said, but I think it's finding the right attitude, aptitude, willingness to work, willingness to be flexible, understand your business, and understand the way that you work. I think in some respects, if you need to train someone, that's not such a bad thing. You need to train them to drive a tractor, to milk cows. You train them in the way that you want them trained, rather than them bringing a whole world of other things from another farm. Can be seen as a good thing. So yes, experience is essential and useful, but training them to fit in with your business is also a key part of it, and just as essential.
Can I just add in, Johan, just as I went first, I think just supporting what Harry's just said, one of the things I wrote down is there is no perfect fit. I think often sometimes we're looking for the perfect person that's got all the skills, all the knowledge, all the attitude. It's that willingness to take somebody in who's perhaps not absolutely perfect, but the willingness to train them and develop them. And I think that's exactly what Harry's just said. It's that bit about willingness to train people as well. Don't go out there thinking the perfect person exists, because they don't. It might be they don't have quite enough skills, but they've got a great attitude. One of those you're going to have to work with. So yeah, don't look for the perfect fit. Look for the person that fits it best right now.
Thanks, Paul. Hugh, there's a lot more to this than is what everybody has said, than just ability to do the job. It's not just whether somebody is able to do the job or will be able to do the job. There's a lot more to it.
Yes, absolutely. Just selecting the people that I think we talked a lot about attitude, and I think when we're recruiting as a business, that's one of the things we're looking for is the right attitude to fit that business, particularly if the experience and skills are not there. And I think that's something a lot of farmers I think are concerned about today, is that the people aren't there, so they've got to look outside the box.
I guess it's even though many farms are small in terms of the number of people that they employ, it is about finding somebody who can work within that team. Stephen, is that it's almost like you could have the best football player in the world, but unless they're going to play as part of the team, you're not going to get the most out of them. The team isn't going to perform as well as it might otherwise do.
That's a nice analogy, Johan, and I think you hit the nail on the head when we think about recruitment in small teams. And large employers will be employing people on a regular basis, and they'll have some really good procedures in place and understand the gaps in their teams. If we're smaller farms, and quite often we are small businesses, we're only recruiting people once every few years, and that might be pre-planned through retirement. It might be suddenly that we're having to fill a shortfall in our workforce. So yeah, that team player is important, and like I said, that communication is important. And I think it's understanding your own values as a business and really understanding your own culture. And if you can communicate that, you're more likely to attract the right people to your business as well. So it is a two-way street. As much as you're trying to recruit someone and attract someone, they're looking for an employer that's going to invest in them as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephen. Harry, there's a question here that says, should we recruit for competence or character first? I guess really and truly it is going to be that that mixture of both of those attributes. But is there a way that we test or prioritize that? What would you be looking for?
I think it is character. I think character comes first for me, and then you can train next. So it's testing someone's character, and you know, in terms of talking to them, in terms of if you've got them on farm, you're showing them around the farm, and you can see the mannerisms and the way they respond to the kind of work that you're going to require them to do. What's their response? Can they look after cattle? Can they perform hoof care at the moment? Can they drive a tractor? Maybe, maybe not. But are they willing to learn? And I think that's hugely important.
Thank you. And Hugh, I'm interested in your business. So how do you go about recruiting somebody? What is the best way to initiate this process? I don't mean necessarily going through the process itself in terms of putting an advert out, but how do you work out what you need, and so that you can go out there and recruit it, whether that's for a client or for whether you're doing it yourself?
Yeah, so I guess if you're looking at trying to work out whether you're going to get the right person in the first instance, I think it's really important to work out what the job is that you're wanting that person to do, and detail out all the jobs that they're going to have to do. Therefore, then you can look for the skills and the experience that they're looking for, but then also the sort of the experiences they may have had, and the way you can sort of gauge the questions, or even the advertising elements in terms of whether you're going to do it on social media, through a website, or through a job advert.
Okay, thank you. And Paul, for you too?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the sort of the interview process, really. This question about how do we recruit competence or do we recruit character? One of the things I think we often find difficult at interview is, well, how do I pull out people's character traits? And one of the bits of advice I give to people, and often farmers have never been, well, none of us have ever been trained how to deliver an interview, but often we can get fixated on what I call the can you questions. So can you do this? Can you do that? Can you foot trim? Can you milk a cow? And of course, anybody who's coming for an interview will generally say, well, yeah, of course I can. And then they come on farm and we discover they can't. So I talk about ask how questions. So how would you deal with a situation when a member of staff was struggling to do something? How would you respond if somebody spoke to you in this way? And when you ask those type of how questions at interview, you're going to elicit more about the person's character and their response. So yes, you've obviously got to ask the technical questions. Can you do this? Have you got experience of doing this? But when you ask questions about, well, how would you respond? How would you deal with? What do you think about this type of situations? Ask more of those questions at interview, and that will elicit more of the character. Because if somebody says, for instance, if you said, how would you respond if somebody refused to do a task you'd ask them to do? Well, I just box them around the ears and tell them to get on with it. You're going to know what that person's character is a little bit by the way they respond to those sort of questions.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Stephen, yourself?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to sort of clarify the role and expectations. I think if we know what we're recruiting for, there's an element of, like I say, aptitude and willingness to work. We do also need to understand the gap we're trying to fill within the team, and there could be some technical components around that. When we think of jobs like spraying, for example, we need to ensure they've got the right qualifications and regulated certificates to be able to perform that task. So clarifying the role and expectations will help us to actually sort of attract the right person. And then, quite rightly, as Paul said, then it's thinking about how they'd actually deliver within the role. So those are the two key elements for me, Johan.
Thank you. Harry, what does BASIS do in terms of things like this? So you certificate a lot of people, but you also look at character and things like that. It's not just that ability to do something. It's the bigger picture, I guess.
To a degree, I think we'd focus on the technical skills, certainly within crop production and crop protection. So I think I'd hand to Hugh and Paul and Stephen to check the character bit, the willingness to learn, And once you've got someone taken on the farm and they want to progress, they want to progress their own careers, maybe within their business or further on, then yes, you'd come to us to take on more technical skills, get some lifetime certificates under your belt, and that's how, from a basis point of view, we develop people. So I would think that the other three guys on the call would check the character first, and then they'd come to us for the technical training secondly.
Thank you very much. Right, I'm going to stick with recruitment for a little while, and then we'll start looking at retention. Once we've got somebody, how do we keep them? So if we look at recruitment, there is a labour shortage in agriculture, in the rural sector. It is difficult. It can prove difficult to recruit the right people. So how do we make our businesses attractive to potential employees? I see Hugh's nodding, so I'm going to ask that to you first, Hugh. I mean, in terms of, we're not just competing perhaps with other farms, but with other businesses, other jobs that people might perceive as being, well, I can do this. I don't have to work all the hours. I don't have to work out in all weathers. So how do we make our farm business attractive in terms of recruiting the best and most appropriate person?
That's a great question, Johan. It's a question we regularly get asked, and particularly when I'm sort of talking to groups of farmers. And I think farmers are really struggling to sort of connect with people. And particularly, as you said, there's competition between farms, but also to outside of the industry. And I think some of the simple things that farmers can do is actually start to create a profile for themselves within an area, because you're typically going to be fishing within a localized area if you're looking for general farm workers rather than maybe special sort of farm managers. And I think the way to do that is it's multiple ways, but social media is the one place that everybody looks now. And you can ask a room full of farmers how many people are on Facebook. Quite a lot may be, but they may not have their business on there. So something that they should perhaps look at doing is using those channels like Facebook, Instagram, even TikTok, but also having a very basic website and not expensive to create now. And your website is the old yellow pages. When someone hears or sees an advert, the first thing they do is they get on the keyboard and have a look. Well, where is this? What's this about? So actually giving an explanation in terms of what that farm is about is really important. I've seen some other successful farms also sending out sort of newsletters to the local community, talking about what they're doing. Busy times of the year when silaging is going on or muck spreading, there's a lot of heavy traffic around, or there's a lot of smell in the area. Warning people in the local area in terms of what's going on, but it also creates communication and they understand what's going on. Open Farm Sundays is another great way of getting people to come along to your farm and actually seeing that you're there. So when you do advertise, you've got more people that are going to connect and know that you're there.
Thank you. Thanks you. Paul, is that something you'd echo? I mean, can we put too much stuff on social? Well, I guess we can, social suicide or whatever. We don't want to put the right sort of stuff out there, don't we? How honest?
Yeah, so I totally agree with what Hugh's just said. And actually, there's another slight angle to the social media, which is there are plenty of people putting things on social media against farming. So if we don't respond and actually put some positive messages out there, positive images of what we're doing on farm, then effectively that side of the argument is winning. But my answer to that question, when you ask how do I make my farm attractive, I'd sort of talk about it a bit like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Start with the absolute basic things at the bottom. Has somebody got somewhere warm and clean to have their lunch? Are you providing half decent working conditions? And again, if you've heard me speak about this before, I make no apology for talking about our inability in farming to create decent sanitation. Can we provide a working toilet for people on a farm? People are now comparing us with working in Starbucks or Tesco's. So we've got to get some of the basics right first. That's how you make your farm more attractive. Anybody coming for an interview is likely to have 2 or 3 jobs. Some of these small things, which we might think are not important, could be the difference. What's the accommodation like? If you're going to offer someone a caravan or a house, make sure it's clean before you show them around. There's some really simple, basic things we can do to make our farm look more attractive. The last one is working hours. if you're somebody that's got a business where you're offering the opportunity for people to work less hours, maybe more time off, more flexibility, all these sorts of things are going to make your farm more attractive than even the farm next door.
Thank you. And Harry, similar for you?
It is. I think I'd look wider and just a plea to farmers that when they're saying that they can't find people, just talk the job up. Don't talk the job down. So just be positive about what you do, and they can use social media to just take a quick video of them in a field. They're doing some crop walking with their agronomist or out on their own. And it's just a lovely time to be out in this spring. If you're out and about, it's great. And I think videos and snapshots like that people think, oh yeah, that'd be quite good. I'd like to get involved with that. Just from a whole industry point of view, talk the job up, don't talk it down. I think people get a bit hung up on all weather woes and policy woes and costs and this sort of thing. And anyone looking from the outside would go, oh, perhaps Costa Coffee is a better place to work. So I think we just need a bit of positivity all round, really.
Yeah, we can be a bit of an industry of moaners sometimes, and sometimes justifiably so. But in doing that, we do tend to lose sight of the bigger picture sometimes. And broadly, it is a great industry to work in, to be part of. We are doing something really, really important, and there are lots of opportunities out there. Stephen, social media videos, etc.
Don't talk to me about social media, Johan. Not the expert on that. However, I really agree with what the other respondents have already said. I think that positive reputation and sort of community engagement is really, really important, and social media will play a big part in that. But again, if you are using socials, make sure it's local, because obviously it goes out to a wide audience, and you've got to think about those local Facebook groups, etc., which you're engaging with. I really like the idea about inviting people onto your farm as well. Open Farm Sunday is a great example, Hugh. And if you're getting your farm ready to invite the public onto your business, you're probably dealing with some of the issues that you were talking about, Paul. You're actually thinking about how your farm looks and feels when people are walking up that drive for the first time or driving up it. And then the only final thing to add really is think about work experience as well. How do we attract young people into the businesses, and how do we give them the opportunities? And clearly the next generation who come from farming families, they understand about the industry and what we can offer. But we've also got to think about a new generation who haven't engaged with us before, and how do we attract those people in? Because we do have different skills requirements for the future. We do need to think about a more diverse and inclusive sector, being a more inclusive sector. So work experience, although it's challenging, it is something that you could consider, whether it's through your local schools and colleges or going more broadly, Johan.
Thank you. And Hugh, just sort of sticking with this for a little bit. I mean, in terms of the honesty of it, I mean, obviously we're going to show the things that are good about the farm business, or about the job, or about the role. We don't really want to sort of I don't know, sugarcoat it or airbrush it, or do we? I mean, we all see pictures of people's social media lives that look fantastic, and a lot of the time they are photos that are just taken for Instagram or for Facebook or whatever it might be. But yeah, just talk around that in terms of the picture that we paint, because we don't want to be moany, but we don't want to go too far the other way either.
No, I think it's a very fair point. I think we are all turning into an Instagram world. When you look at my children, it's constantly about getting the right angle for the photograph. And I think the whole world is thinking that everything is pristine, but in reality it's not. And I think having some sort of reality is key, but also be mindful that it's not all doom and gloom, because you can, on having your own farm, I know you can have weeks and months where it is all doom and gloom. We've had an awfully wet time now, and you could be sort of down in the dumps. And I think be careful not to get that out there, but I think some sort of reality in terms of the challenges that happen, and talking through that sort of daily routine that's going on. We've had a really tough day today. It's been wet and miserable, but then we've had this calf born, and it's amazing, new life come into the world. So you can mix that up a little bit. And I think making it real. And I think if you talk to a lot of people who are seeing that success now with the likes of videos on social media, and if you use the likes of channels of LinkedIn, making it not too pristine is the way to do it. Is actually making it real, that's happening, and not trying to edit a video so it's absolutely perfect. You can have the outtakes there. You can actually have it with the rain, the mud, and everything else going on, but just be mindful that there's elements there that it's got to excite people.
Thank you. Thanks. Before this turns into a social media, how to be authentic, I think is the word that everybody uses, or maybe they don't. Maybe it's moved on from that. But beyond salary, which of course is important, what are the other things that make a farm an important or not necessarily important, but an attractive place to work? Harry, do you want to pick this one up, and then perhaps Stephen, and then Paul?
I think, well, I won't say too much, but a sense of contribution to the business. So you go home and you feel like you've done a good day's work and you've really contributed to the business. And it's a sense of satisfaction. And that's not a sense of satisfaction gained from doing 70 hours a week or working through poor conditions. It's just thinking that was a really good day, and I've really contributed to this business, and I'm really pleased with myself.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, I think competitive wages and benefits are really important. We've got to be honest about that, and I think when we are recruiting, we should be quite open and transparent about what we're offering as well. So that clearly is important. But on top of that, it's providing that sort of safe, healthy, and supportive work environment as well. And farm safety is something that's really important. And as someone who's been working very closely to think about how we can attract the next generation in, if you're a parent, you might not be thinking, you've got to give the right environment for your child to go and work in. And again, anybody who goes to work should have that basic principle of being able to come home safely at the end of the day. Work-life balance, we've touched on a little bit, and Harry just picked up on it there. 70-hour weeks can be regular at times, but it's not all through the year. Quite frequently, there are periods which are less. Having that flexibility as employer is quite important. And I'm sure we're touching on it in a minute, but training and development, and how we're going to invest in you, because if I'm going to come and work for you, I'm investing a lot of my time and a lot of my experience in you and your business. We want to also see that we're being invested in ourselves.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, I think just picking up on what Stephen's just said, I was going to talk about two things, training and development being one of them. And I use this phrase, and people often say to me, well, what's the point in me spending all this time training somebody, because they'll just leave, and then somebody else gets the benefit. And I just say, well, what happens if you don't train them and they stay? And when you think about it like that, actually, from your reputation perspective, what other people say about you, if, as Stephen says, if you're investing in people, it doesn't have to be much. It doesn't have to be, great big long courses. It can just be giving people time to go to dairy tech. It can be putting them on a foot trimming course. That sense of I'm investing in you is really important. But the one I was going to really say is appreciate people. Many people just want to feel appreciated, and often we are too quick to criticize, particularly if someone's inexperienced and they're not doing quite what we want them to do and we're under pressure, is remembering that a thank you at the end of the day is just two words, but they are very, very powerful. So all of us, but want to be appreciated. Some even more important than others in terms of their personality style. But that's what I would say. Just be appreciative. If someone has worked a 12-hour day or a 70-hour week, as Stephen's just described, do we just say, well, that's what I'm paying them for? Or do we still say at the end of it, look, I appreciate the fact you've done your 70 hours this week. So there's nothing wrong with making people feel appreciated.
A little bit like Harry was saying about, it's about making a contribution, that they're doing something that is worthwhile, that they're contributing to the business. Paul, I'm going to ask you this, and I'm going to move it on to Hugh. In terms of salary, in terms of a job recruitment advert in whatever form, do you think the salary should be mentioned on the adverts? Is it wasting people's time to expect them to apply for a job without knowing how much they might be remunerated for, or leaving it till the interview stage? What sort of things should we include on a job advert in terms of salary and benefits? Is it enough to just say attractive salary, plus whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Hugh answer this in more detail because he's the recruitment specialist, really. But in terms of my view, and when we've done recruitment, if you don't put at least an idea of a salary on, you're expecting people to apply for a job not knowing one of the absolute basic fundamentals of what am I going to get paid. So you can put a salary range in. That's what we tended to do. And then there's people often say, yeah, but people will just ask for the higher salary in the range. Well, you can ask certain questions at interviews to establish what people earn. So I personally think, yes, you should have some form of salary scale at least on your advert. Hugh, what do you think?
Yeah, it's always a mixed probably answer on this one, because I think it really depends on the role itself. But yeah, I think really importantly, it's what the complete package is. Certainly we're talking about farming. We're looking at accommodation with it, and I think things we can talk about salary. The salary range is important, but sometimes you will get those people say, well, you advertised up to this level, but then I think it's very clear that it's based on experience if you're going to put a salary range in or a salary. And I think, going back onto that salary piece, it's something that I think people fall foul on, to go, well, I think that's what it's worth, but actually do your homework and work out what it is actually worth, that job. Benchmark it, what's in the area, because there's no point you advertising £5,000 or less than all the other farms in the area. You're not going to get anybody coming to you. So something that's really important. And then also the additional perks that come with that job. So that little bit of flexibility, the hours, the shift patterns, so that people are kind of quite clear in terms of what's expected from the package itself.
So almost, you sort of know to a certain extent, no surprises for people when they get to the interview. It's about finding out more about the job rather than finding out actually what is involved and what isn't involved.
I do have a story. Sorry, Hugh, I do have a story about that very briefly, where somebody went through quite a senior position right through to third interview before they talked about salary. And right at the end, it was like, great, well, everything seems fantastic. This is the salary we're offering. And literally it was about £20,000 less than the person was on. And they'd done 3 interviews before they actually got to that stage. So the whole thing was a complete waste of time. So yeah, you've got to have the salary conversation fairly near to the beginning.
Yeah, and I think a really simple way of doing that is when we're interviewing is very much asking, what salary you're on now, what are your expectations? Because they may be on a lower salary and expecting quite significantly more, and it might be out of range. And every time you meet them, it's important to ask that question, because quite often it can be different to the first time that was mentioned.
Thank you. Shall we? I'm not saying we're done with recruitment, but is there anything that anybody else wants to sort of talk about in terms of recruitment before we move it on? I mean,
just Paul. One thing here, just go back a couple of steps. We were talking, weren't we, earlier on about competence. I don't know whether Hugh agrees with this, but we will always talk about, you have a job description. So often people can describe the role they want someone to do. We have what's called a person specification. So that is 2 elements. It's the attributes, the character attributes we're looking for, like reliability and things like that you would need to dig into an interview. Then you have the technical skills. So have a person specification document the same way as you have a job description document, because otherwise you don't know what you're looking for. So a job description tells you what you're looking for in terms of what they can do. A person specification defines who they are. That was my last thing to say about getting some clarity on that.
Thank you. Thanks. Let's talk then about, I guess, retention. I mean, we've spoken about the need to have more to the job than just a decent salary. People are expecting a little bit more these days. And Harry, was it you that mentioned a 70-hour week to begin with? There is this sort of badge of honour that we have in farming, that who can work the most hours. But people, in your experience, Harry, are looking for something different to that these days, a better work-life balance, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I'd like to think so. I mean, many years ago, I was a farm manager in Cambridgeshire, and it was almost in the late 1990s. It was a culture where you had 110 hours because that was the shortest route to immense sense of pride. And I think things have changed, and I think rightly so. So yeah, and I think farms are very, very seasonal, and I think we've tried to even out the amount of hours on some farms. So we accept that, yes, in a cereal farm there'll be, throughout August it'll be a busy time, but in January, well, there's some chance for some time off. And I think farms feel a little duty bound to find work for people, and they're painting bits of machinery and sheds and things like that that didn't really need to be done. And I think that's when people start thinking, perhaps I need another job. So in terms of retention, I think the overall hours done through the year, and a full explanation of the busy periods and what happens in the downtimes, because a busy period should go quickly, should be fun, should be exciting, should be productive. But the times, we've just come through January and February now. Was there some chance for some time off, to make up for the time that you were busy in the autumn and the spring? So yeah, it's certainly an opportunity for explaining and making sure that someone isn't thinking, I need to change my career, because the dark winter months can be pretty dull.
And the evenings are getting lighter now as we speak, just a little bit, but that will soon change with a vengeance in terms of lighter evenings. But over the winter months, Harry, there are conferences and things that people can go to in terms of CPD points, basis points, etc., and it's a good way not just to network, but to keep to exchange views, exchange knowledge, and increase your learning and understanding. And again, I guess being part of that wider community and realizing that you are part of something a lot bigger than just the farm that you're working on.
Yeah, the Llama Show is a good example of that, where it seems half the world of youngsters rock up at Llama and head round the show, and it's a great day out. I think it's a super day out. Probably lots of machinery that you can't really afford, but other than that, it's a super day out. So, and that and other conferences, and it's a chance for learning, as you say. It's either conferences or a little bit more formal trainings can be taken up in these winter months. Yeah, for sure.
Important, Stephen, for people to be given the opportunity to go to events like that, like in terms of developing their career, feeling wanted, feeling they're some part of something bigger, etc.
I think it is. It's, the industry's one big community, and once we've come in and sort of settled in a role in farming, we tend to stay, if we're honest. And I smile at what Harry was saying earlier on, because back in the late 1990s, those 110-hour weeks, well, I think we were both there together, weren't we, Harry? But yeah, respecting work-life balance is really important. I think that's really key. And I think people who are well rested before harvest, for example, are going to have fewer accidents, going to be more engaged. And as we've touched on, during the periods where we're less busy, there are opportunities to sort of reskill and upskill ourselves. And it doesn't have to be formal training. That can be CPD, that can be reading, that can be attending local group events. There's many different ways that we can do that. And I think we're probably quite good at it. We don't always recognize we're doing it. So perhaps a little bit more recognition around some of what we're doing, a little bit more encouragement never goes amiss. And that does make us more rounded as individuals, and it makes us better at our jobs, and that's crucially important. One thing I was going to say, because we sort of moved off recruitment, but not to forget the local colleges and universities as well, because they're a great source, but also they're a good source of CPD as well, and there's some great alumni around those. So look at the other opportunities you've got around you, monitor farms, etc.
Thank you, Hugh. In terms of well, I guess if we look at people who work on farms, I mean, we are an industry where there is a lot of loyalty. We still have those sort of long service awards that are given out at the farm shows every summer. But also people, I guess, we are a very mobile society. People move around a lot more. People do change jobs. I remember my dad many years ago saying to me that if you change your job too often in his age, it was a sign that you couldn't hold a job down. If you don't change your job in the modern age, it's you're stuck in a rut. But how do we retain the best people? Because ambitious people do want to they do want to do their job, they do want to move on, they do want to progress. and yet, as Paul was alluding to earlier on, you might end up training somebody up, they might move on, but equally, if you don't train them, do you really want somebody who is just prepared to do the same thing and not make that progress? So how do we retain the best people, the most ambitious people?
This is a very long subject, Johan, I would suggest, but I think let's look at it in the simple terms, is that you taking someone onto your business is an investment. And if you buy a tractor, you take time to read the manual, you take time to teach your staff how to use it, learn how to maintain it. It's very similar when you take an individual on within your own business. And I think if you look at it as an investment straight away, and the most important thing is to do the first bits right, which is the onboarding piece. You've gone to that cost of either using a recruitment agency, an advert, or a lengthy process to find somebody, and then you bring them in. And if you don't spend the time early on, they could be up and gone within a few weeks because they really haven't understood what the job's about. So I always suggest to people that you take someone on, maybe for the first week they actually don't do their job that they've come to the farm or the job to do, is actually learn about that business from start to finish. You take a dairy farm, it's from calf being born all the way through the growing stage, going into in-calf heifers, through to milking transition and so on. There's a stage to all of that. There's all the feeding, the field work and so on. So I think it's important that people get to understand the whole business so they understand where they fit within their business to start with, and then really take time to show them the job, how you want it doing. And then it goes on to communication and regular feedback in terms of how they're getting on. So after the first day of them doing a task, and it could be feeding the calves, give them some praise if they've done something right. But if you spot something you're not particularly happy with, you address it early on in the career, not waiting 6 weeks, 6 months down the line when it can blow up. Well, you didn't tell me that's how you wanted it doing. So it's taking time and actually thinking about, not just, okay, it cost me lots of money, here's the keys, get on, do the job. Actually take time to train them effectively. I could go on for quite a lot, so I'll let other people answer the question.
Well, Paul, investment in people, as it were, and then we'll go to Harry.
Yeah, I've got 3 quick points to make, really, picking up on each what the previous speakers have said. I thought we talk a lot about the investment cost and actually how it's often referred to as a cost. But if you imagine taking somebody on just at minimum wage now for an average farm, which is about £35,000 a year, excluding anything to do with housing, in 3 years, you're talking about over £100,000 investment. But we, as Hugh says, we don't often look at that type of investment in the same way that we do with a tractor or a piece of equipment. We might want to buy, a new drill or something, and we'll think about that much more. So it is about thinking about people as an investment rather than a cost. The second point I was going to make is often retention goes wrong at the recruitment stage. If we've got the wrong person into the business in the first place because we haven't interviewed effectively, we weren't clear what the job was, then often it can be difficult to hold somebody. Then secondly, by the induction, that's again where retention goes wrong if my induction isn't well planned. And my main thing is learn how to lead. So one of the skills that we don't learn, and we're now talking about staff retention, is how to lead people, how to lead and manage people. And it's not often something we go on courses for. There are programs out there where if you're a senior person leading others, it's a skill that you need to learn. It isn't just passed down to you through the generations. And often bad habits are passed down through the generations. The single biggest reason in the 16 years I've been in my business that people say they leave is poor management, poor communication, the way people speak to me. So learning how to lead people is, to me, one of the critical things in terms of retaining your best people.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Harry?
Yeah, I can just only build on Paul's commentary, really, that it's a big investment and they are an intrinsic part of the business, and they absolutely have to be part of the business. So if you're just telling them what to do every day at the top of the day, and it inspires poor engagement, low engagement, then they'll think, there's something better to do elsewhere. And so, but it's very much part of the farm business. Where do you want to go with your business? What do you want to do with your investment in terms of a person? What training can they take on? New tractors, new machinery, new sprayers, that sort of thing. There's dealer events that you can get people along to. That would inspire training and just generally engagement, really, I think is is my point, is bring the person into the business. The key thing I think I found when you're working for a farmer, that the buck stops with the farmer. And when you work for a big corporate company that Stephen and I have worked for, that you've got bosses on top of bosses and more bosses, and it can be a bit soulless. Whereas you're sat in a Land Rover with the business owner, the person who is got the whole business on their shoulders, and that could be quite engaging if you let your members of staff engage with you.
Thank you. I think we're sort of 45 minutes into this now. I think it's probably a good opportunity. We'll just go around everybody, and just if you could each say what, I'm sticking with you, Harry, if you could each say what your organisation or company can do to improve the recruitment and retention of staff, so that people watching this are sort of understand exactly why you're on this webinar panel and what you can do. So Harry, what in terms of basis, and we spoke very briefly at the beginning in the introduction about you oversee exams and training, you develop syllabus, and you deliver new training and certification. How does that how does that improve the retention and indeed the recruitment of staff? What can you offer people? And then we'll do Hugh, and then Stephen, and then Paul.
I think we can offer training from basic soil and water courses, so people can understand when ploughing is in good condition, black grass control, that sort of thing, and then it can build on from there, where you do a foundation agronomy courses. You get a bit more involved with that, and you can also we run the Neroso program on behalf of the voluntary initiative. So if you're a sprayer operator, you get involved with that as well, and engage with some training, yearly training, or the many events where you can pick up CPD points. And so it's a building really. And I know it's often an ideal route for an agronomist. If they spent a few years on a crop sprayer and they think, I'm ready to do more, then they might want to get into agronomy. I suppose whilst I'm saying that doesn't maybe help retention when they want to grow themselves, and perhaps they grow to want ambition beyond the farm, and that's a discussion that that they have to have with the farm owner. But I think if you get 5 years good service out of a chap and they move on, I think that's better than trying to hold on to somebody who isn't quite as keen and engaged in the business as you'd like them to be. So it's career development for us.
Yeah, thank you. Hugh?
Yeah, so I guess a little bit in terms of what we do. Cultural Connect are an agribusiness recruitment firm, and primarily our focus is helping businesses attract the right people. So our job is a client will come to us and say, look, I need you to fill this particular job for us. We get a really good understanding of the job, but more importantly, the business and the culture that's there. And then we go out to the market to go and find people. We have an extensive database. We offer a headhunting service. We put adverts out there. So all the things we've kind of talked about, attracting people, is what we do. And I guess then we're then doing that screening in terms of the skill set, the experience, that culture fit, and qualification for that role. So effectively our client then has a short list of people that should be able to do the job, the right fit, and really willing to do the job. So it kind of stops all those tire kickers coming along. And then we help those clients then sort of go through the interview process. We help with negotiations in terms of getting the right salaries, but we also help our clients hold their hands in terms of that induction period, and giving them advice in terms of how to retain people, doing one-to-ones and getting the right communication. We'll stay in touch with those candidates through the early stages of their career with the clients. But on the flip side, if candidates are looking for a job, they can also come to us and we can help them find the right jobs in the industry in terms of what they're looking for and their progression and skill set requirements.
Thank you. Thanks, Hugh. Stephen, Tia.
Yeah, certainly to Tia of the Institute of Agriculture and Horticulture, we're working at sector level, so different level. Obviously, you mentioned at the start, Johan, about thinking about capacity and capability within the industry. So capacity level, we have some very detailed and comprehensive careers information on our website. We've got over 40 job profiles there, which you go and have a look at, and you can to try and decide whether you want to work in that sector or that part of the industry. Many of those are supported with point of view videos as well from people who are actually working in the sector. So if you can't see it, you can't be it. And that's the best influence we can have, really. But we also act as a signposting service. So we want to signpost off to the skills providers such as BASIS, City and Guilds, Lantra, but also the recruiters as well, who are providing the opportunities, because no good attracting people into the industry if we can't provide them with those opportunities. And secondly, what we do is we've got some really good resources on our website as well. So we've talked a little bit about job profiles, job descriptions, interview questions. We've got downloadable templates for all of those. We've got a complete recruitment toolkit, which you can access on our website, and that's there to really help the industry. Like I say, if you don't do this very often, all those resources are available. And we also have quite a few what we call essential skills training courses as well, all online. We are digital first, and that's so they can be accessed 24/7 wherever you are. And we have complete induction programs, whether you're working in an arable farm, a livestock farm, or fresh produce. And to go and have a look, I'd say it's there, it's a resource. We've had some great DEFRA funding to really get this off the ground, and we're there to support the industry. And whether it's professional development or business skills, come and have a look and see what we've got.
Thank you. And Paul, developing people at Real Success.
Yeah, so Real Success. Yeah, we always take the baton from Hugh to a certain degree. So one of the things I would say is that managing people and recruiting people isn't easy, and often it's the skill that we lack. So what Real Success do, what we do is we come alongside the farmer and support them during the process of trying to retain staff. So we will work with people over a long period, a bit like you would do with a vet or a nutritionist or a technician or a business consultant. We are effectively people consultants. So we'll work alongside the team across the UK. We'll come onto farm, understand what your issues are, help you to put strategies in place to keep people. Some of that is learning yourself how to communicate more effectively. A lot of what we do is through our profiling system, helping you to understand your own communication style and working that with the team. We help with reviews. We help with disciplinaries. Sometimes we need help moving somebody off the farm as well as recruitment, and that can be a bit scary for people. So navigating your way through employment legislation is the other bit that we would add as well. So the way we tend to talk about it is we help you from the moment you've got somebody, from the moment you don't need that person, and everything in between is what Real Success. But we're very much about coming alongside. We're hoping to run an aspiring managers program in the summer, actually, because one of the things we recognize is that if we're going to keep people in the industry, sometimes somebody who becomes a manager suddenly then moves from being responsible for the task to being responsible for the people who are responsible for the task, and they don't have those skills. So we believe we want to try and prepare some of those aspiring managers who want to take on that role as a manager and give them the people skills that they'll need when they take that role on, as opposed to getting promotion and then thinking, well, now what do I do? Because I've got to manage rotas and people and emotions, and we try to help people with all of that. So yeah, that's Real Success.
Thank you. Thanks. So anybody watching this, it's good to know that there is help there at various different levels within the recruitment and retention sphere at whatever sort of level you want to come into it. Paul, sorry, Hugh, I know you've got to sort of go at 6 o'clock. Is there a way that we can, I guess, widen the talent pool? We've spoken briefly about recruiting from agricultural colleges, using social media, etc., but sort of casting the net a little bit more widely than the traditional routes into farming. There is a lot of interest in agriculture out there, increasingly so. How do we sort of capture some of that talent or widen the net?
I think there's two areas here. I think you can certainly look outside it, and we talked a little bit before about attracting people through that kind of social media platform or platforms to get people that maybe are watching Clarkson's farming and I wouldn't want to get involved in that, come along, have a look at the farm. And I think there's other areas of industry that you could approach. So sort of ex-military is something that regularly comes across our path in terms of people that are leaving the military. They want to have an outside job. They're quite long hours. They like to have some discipline, like to know what they're doing, can actually fit quite well within farms. But what I see is that actually very much a protocol-led farm works really well for ex-military people. So that's something to bear in mind. And I think there's a whole pool of people that's totally untapped. And we're seeing it now around, if you look at what's happening, certainly in the UK, there's more and more single parents out there, and they've got parenting responsibilities to do. And actually being able to go on a farm and work, start early in the day and finish late in the day is actually quite difficult for them. But actually, if you can look to change your business around, we talk quite a bit about dairy farms in this instance, farmers milking traditionally at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning and then 5, 6 o'clock at night to have a 12-hour split. But you try and get people who've got kids to drop off to school to do that, it's not possible. But if you change your milking time to 9 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock at night, you actually open up a whole different pool of people. If you talk to farmers that are milking 3 times a day, getting people to milk in the evening is really easy because people have finished the day job, kids have gone to bed, they want to earn some extra money. It's the same goes actually if you started attracting people after the school run at 9 o'clock and between school at 9 and 3. And we're seeing a lot of businesses now being quite successful by doing shift patterns where they're doing sort of 8 hours or even reduced hours, 6 hours, say. I think you just got to think a little bit differently, and that's where you will tap into some pools of people that are sitting there quite keen.
Thank you. Harry, do you want to come in on this at all? This idea, I guess, of building the job around the person rather than expecting the person to fit into some sort of rigid structure that was devised years and years ago, and probably nobody knows why it was devised in that way.
I think the theme of the whole webinar has been around opening your mind to the possibilities of people from non-traditional backgrounds coming in and getting involved. It is back to attribute and attitude, and it is places a little bit of onus onto the farm business. Can they train a person in? It strikes me that when you go to the States or you go to Australia, they are reliant on seasonal labour, and they will train people to drive their prize John Deere every year. They don't need or they feel the need to retain someone that knows how to drive that tractor. They will just train up a new person to drive the tractor or the combine or whatever piece of machinery it is. So I think perhaps we are a little stuck in our tradition that we need a person on farm 12 months of the year, and perhaps need to open our mind to say, who else is out there who would like a job for 4 months, 6 months, 2 months, and that would do.
Thank you, Harry. Paul, you do a lot of work in the dairy sector, and I guess there's increasingly no such thing as a traditional sort of farm worker, or that people challenge our preconceptions, I guess.
Absolutely. I was just going to really build on both what Hugh and Harry said, actually, was don't dismiss those who haven't got the experience on their CVs. So certainly I found when we were pushing CVs through to people, we would have a chat with somebody, and actually they've got, whether it's from the military or even from some parts of business. One of the best examples I can give you is I've got a client down in Devon who's very open-minded, will look through the CVs for transferable skills, and has taken somebody on who worked in McDonald's, understood about rotas, understood about long shifts, was happy to work, is their best employee, didn't know anything about farming, but has learned very quickly and is now one of their best employees. So I think, as Harry's just said, we have no choice now, really. That pool of people that have got the experience is getting older, and we haven't been plugging in necessarily as many young people from colleges and universities and things like that. So my message to farmers is don't be frightened to take somebody in who hasn't necessarily got on their CV the fact they've worked on a farm before. And yes, you might have to, kiss a few frogs before you find your princes. You may have to get through a few people, but eventually you'll find people who are there because they want to be there. Go back to our attitude and alignment. You're far better to have somebody who's not yet trained but got a great attitude and character than have somebody who's really well trained but is very difficult to work with. So it's to me, it's about look for transferable skills and then train them. That's the way we'll extend the pool.
Thank you. Stephen, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is all music to my ears, hearing all everybody's comments around the room, the virtual room. I mean, we do a lot of work we're trying to think about sector attractiveness. So, for example, we have regular articles going to a magazine called Parents Mag, which goes to 1 million parents every year and highlights the roles that are available in agriculture and horticulture. We have virtual work experience, so we can get to those 14-year-olds who wouldn't be able to get onto a farmed environment normally. So they can do it in a virtual capacity. We worked with the armed forces. We've got the Farm Forces Covenant, which we signed. We're going to an event on Monday, actually, at Silverstone, which will be thinking about those career changes and how we can attract them across. But it's also people like DWP, careers advisors. Do they understand what opportunities we have? And are they putting people off? So providing resources for them, thinking about how we can demonstrate the opportunities and the skills requirements for the future. That's a whole new webinar, right, Johan, about what we might need. We've got an immediate need now. How do we fill that immediate need in our business at the moment? But also, we've got to be looking ahead. We've got to be looking to 2040 thinking about what skills we might require. And coming fresh off the back of the NFU conference over the last couple of days, there's a lot of talk about data, a lot of talk about AI, a lot of talk about robotics and how that's going to be sort of integrated into the business. It might not be quite here yet, but it's coming. So different skill sets and different needs at different times.
Thank you. Hugh, you've got to go. Right.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. But I'm glad to manage to sort of keep you here until 6 and get you away. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, Hugh. And looking to the future, then let's spend sort of the last sort of 5 or 10 minutes to say, looking to the future. Well, how do we see the job changing, and what should we be looking for, Stephen? I mean, you mentioned data. I mean, they do say, don't they, that kids growing up now, that the jobs that they are going to end up doing haven't even been invented yet, and you can see that if you think back 10 or 20 years, that people are doing jobs today that didn't exist 10 or 20 years ago. So what sort of skills should we be open-mindedly looking for or considering when recruiting and retaining people?
Well, I'll also go back, Johan, to when Harry was talking about that farm back in the late 1990s and trying to move the tractor out of the yard. It was far simpler than it is today. Just driving a tractor or working with the machines that we've got now is more complex. And I think the younger generation just pick that up. They pick it up very quickly. They learn by pressing buttons. They learn by peer-to-peer, but also they've got that intuitive ability to be able to adopt new technology. So I think that's one side of it. But clearly, as businesses change, as the environment changes, and the new sort of diagnostic tools come in, whether that's in a livestock situation or whether it's in an arable situation, we're going to have to be able to understand how we can interpret that data, how we can use it to run our farms more productively and more profitably. And I think that's going to change quite a lot. But what I'm really keen on is that we maintain those fundamental skills. And that's why I love organizations like BASIS, because it's teaching you those really fundamental elements you need to be an agronomist or a sprayer operator, which when the technology goes down, you know how it works and you can continue as a business. And I think that's really important. You're quite right. Some of the jobs that in 2040 that we haven't thought of them yet, and they will come along, and the whole sort of remote working thing is going to be quite interesting as well. But I am also conscious that we have holes to fill now, and we've got to think about how we attract people into this current environment. But it's exciting times, and I genuinely believe that this is a great industry to be in. And if I was to have my time again, I don't think I would have changed my mind. I'd still be wanting to work in this industry.
You're on mute.
There you go, schoolboy error, eh? Thanks, Harry. I was going to say, Harry, what about you? You must see a lot of seen a lot of changes in terms of working at things like Demoso spraying. There's a lot more to this sort of stuff than meets the eye and might first be apparent.
There's and it's as Stephen says, it's very exciting to be involved with it, and there's lots of chat of whether a drone would go out and do the scouting and identify issues. Then you put whatever the drone's found into your sprayer, and the sprayers patch sprays the issues. It doesn't need to spray the whole field, and going right down through to robotics that would take care of plants on a plant by plant basis. It's a really exciting field to get into. But we never know how things will evolve and develop. I think the real bonus that farm staff have over AI is that they are very multitasking, and until you can get a Boston Dynamics robot to do everything, then you've got a member of staff that can turn their hand to crop walking to tractor driving to fence repairs and all that sort of thing, all needs a human being currently. So there's no, I don't think there's any risk of us not needing people for the very long time to come.
Thank you. Yeah, that's I think it's very true, isn't it? You know, there are some real sort of white collar jobs out there that are probably a lot more under threat from AI and things like that than farming is. Thinking, you know, things like accountancy, things like law, things like journalism, for example. Thank you. Thanks, Harry. Well, I'm going to come to Paul. Before I do, I'm going to wrap it up after this by asking you sort of for one sort of takeaway point for what's your sort of take-home message for people watching this webinar. So something for Harry and Stephen to think about. Well, Paul, I'd just ask you, you know, what sort of skills should people be looking at that might be useful in the not too distant future?
I think it's a great way to end the webinar is to talk about the future. And as Harry and Stephen were talking, I was just thinking how I'm from outside the industry. Okay, I've been in it now 13 years of the 16 years of my business, but I would be considered a non-farmer. And what amazes me is just how exciting this industry is. And yet, do the public get that vibe from us as an industry? You know, we talk about often young people as we woke because they won't do the work that we did, the 110 hours a week and all that sort of jazz. But these are the people that are going to understand the technology of the future. The science and technology we have in agriculture dwarfs. It's equivalent to me to health. You know, it is incredible the progress we've made both in technology with machinery and technology with things like livestock. And yet, for me, as somebody who looks at the industry perhaps slightly differently, I just love us to put a smile on our face and say this is a great industry to work in, rather than, gosh, don't you know how hard it is and how difficult it is, and nobody wants to work here and we're all hard done by, and that's the message the public gets. So my final message to everybody is, let's, just building on what Harry said, let's just talk up our industry, make it attractive to young people, say it's an exciting career to be part of. Yes, there's the on-farm work, but the whole supply chain is incredibly exciting in terms of technology. So the skill we have more than anything else, I want to leave everybody with, is to accept change, manage it, and look forwards. Embrace what's coming to us, embrace the young people that want to work in our sector, and embrace the people who are currently working outside our sector that could do a fantastic job for us.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. So I'm going to ask you then how your sort of take-home message for people watching this in terms of what you'd like them to remember after watching this webinar.
You asked me again, Johan,
Harry.
I was going to say, because that was my take-home message.
Harry, sorry.
No, I think it's just open your mind to possibilities of how you're going to get work done on the farm. How are you? Do you really need a full-time member of staff? Could it be someone who wants a part-time job and comes on an ad hoc basis? There's lots of opportunities to train them, and put them through tier, put them through basis. There's lots of opportunities, even if they've never set foot on a farm. If they're really interested and really inspired by being outside, then you're more than halfway there. We can do the training bit. We can do the skills bit. Experience helps when people are spend longer time on their own and they need to do a bit of problem solving for themselves. But be open-minded is my take home.
Thank you. And Stephen?
Yeah, echo what everyone else says. It is an exciting time. It's an exciting opportunity. But I think farm work has a steep learning curve, and it can feel overwhelming to new hires. So I would just say those first few weeks are really critical. Make sure they understand what they're there for, what we need them to do, and what success looks like. That regular skills development is really, really important, I think, and all the way through our careers. We're still doing it now, and we're going to continue to do it forever, I'm sure, but make sure that's in place. And make them feel like you're not just filling a labour gap. Actually, you want them in your business, you want them on your farm, and that will bring confidence, it'll bring safety, it'll bring productivity, and ultimately it'll bring long-term loyalty. And that's what we need in this sector.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. So some real food for thought there on how to recruit and retain the best staff for your farm business. We are going to draw it to a close there. I think everybody who has logged on to this webinar will be given the opportunity to view it again. And any questions that have come through, we will pass them on to our panelists. If they've not been answered, you'll be able to get an answer that way. There will be another Farmers Weekly transition webinar along in, I believe, a month or so. But right now, I'm going to say thank you to Stephen Jacob from the Institute for Agriculture and Horticulture, Harry Henderson from BASIS, Paul Harris from Real Success, and Hugh Pocock from Cultura Connect, who had to leave us earlier. Thank you very much for taking part in this Farmers Weekly transition webinar. I'm Johan Tasker, and I'll be back soon with another webinar in the next few weeks. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.